first thing I wanted to ask you is, how did you become so passionate about the power of blessing?
Well, first I had, as I said, explained in the book, a very, very important healing experience of the most incredible resentment. You know, I'd been sacked from my job, or rather, I was put in circumstances where I had no option ethically but to leave. And the people who put me in this situation knew I would make that choice. So it was a manner of sacking me without giving me any compensation for a job I had done with such heart. I mean, I was working in schools, creating a new program on North-South relations, and I invested myself totally. I even invested the equivalent, I'll say in dollars of today, in buying power, $25,000 to $30,000. I don't know how many pounds that would make, maybe 20,000 pounds, out of my personal savings, because there was no money in the budget. And they applauded my work. And then soon after that, I was forced to quit. And that developed this huge resentment that was only healed through blessing. Okay. So I discovered it was a tool, and I started circulating the basic text, Gentle Art of Blessing. And for 30 years, Ben, I've been receiving feedback from all around the world that it works, and feedback from Death Row, Texas.
Yeah.
An inmate used it. I described this person, Roger McGowan, in my book. And the poorest villages in the Sahel, where I have a very dear Muslim friend, a very broad-minded Muslim friend, who's become so enthusiastic that he's initiated villagers into this practice. And they make sort of standing blessing circles when they have a problem and start blessing the circumstances. So many healings. If anybody goes on my blessing website, Gentle Art of Blessing, they will see healings of all sorts of problems.
So I just want to quickly, before we go into detail about the book and some of the amazing anecdotes you just mentioned, you said you had a very painful personal experience, and it was a job that you were passionate about, deeply passionate about, so passionate that you invested significant amount of your own money. Can I just clarify the job? You said it was something to do with the North-South divide.
I was creating a program for schools, secondary schools, on informing the children, the students, of North-South problems. This was in the early 80s, when in Switzerland, at least, almost no one was speaking, and certainly not in schools, about the whole North-South issue. And having lived in Africa, I knew this would be one of the looming issues of the end of the century.
The North-South issue is
the third world issues.
Gotcha.
Third world
yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. And so you had the the devastation of what your heart's passion being taken away from you, essentially.
Well, what was still worse was not so much taking away my passion as the way it was done. It was done in such a false, underhanded way. Yeah. And even people I respected, in fact, it was one person who just hated my guts, and he decided he wanted to get rid of me.
Yeah.
He manipulated his three colleagues, and these were 4 NGOs, his 3 colleagues from the other NGOs, to go along with him. Yeah. And that's hurt me most.
Lovely. And so, the underhand way, the injustice of it. And you said, you were able to sort of heal and move on from that dark and bitter feeling through the practice of blessing. And for someone who has no idea what you mean by the practice of blessing, can you sort of explain?
Yes, I'd be delighted, because what I mean by blessing has nothing to do with the churchy, ecclesiastic, religious thing that most people take for blessing. The minister or the priest at the end of the service saying, my blessings on you, and see you in 2 weeks, or I don't know what.
Yeah.
what I mean is sending focused love energy to a person. And as a matter of fact, I've been rediscovering blessing the whole time for 30 years. It is not a set thing.
Yeah.
And in the past year, I've made a huge, I think, step forward in my own blessing practice, because when I do a lot of blessing in the street on public transport, I have no car, so I travel essentially by bus and tram and train.
Yeah.
And when I look at someone in the bus, instead of just saying, I bless you in your divinity or in your peace, I first, mentally, of course, say, I love you and I bless you in your divine essence. And boy, Ben, that is such a major step, because you can bless people in a sort of gentle way, but not feel totally involved. When you really say, I love you from the heart,
Yeah.
and look at the street, a bum in the street, or a very hard-looking person,
Yeah.
and you say, I love you, that really involves you.
Yeah.
There's no abyss anymore between the two, that person and you. There is only an open door.
So you're sort of even so lovely explanation. So sending focused love energy to a person, and you say your practice is saying, I love you to people when you're
But
out.
that's my recent practice.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend somebody who's
Yeah.
start in that manner. What I suggest strongly, which is the basis of my understanding of blessing, is that we reverse the material image. If I see a drunkard tottering in the street, I bless him in his mastery, in his self-control, and his profound profound contentment. Because if you become, drunk, it means you're somewhere not contented. Every time I see a smoker, I bless them in their deep contentment, because to shove poison in your system knowingly, somewhere you don't really love yourself. I bless them also in their self-love. If I see someone deeply depressed, and unless there's so many around in the bus or the train, I bless them in their serenity, their joy, their peace, etc. All these always the opposite of the material image.
Yes, lovely. So working with what you would like to cultivate in the world, you're saying, and in people's lives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And this is, to be clear, this is something coming inwardly from you. This is an inward sort of gesture. You're not.
Of course, it is totally in silence, always in silence. Of course, there's special occasions. Now, in the recent couple of years, sometimes I might say it to a clerk at a cashier, or in some public circumstance, but it's very, very rare, and only if I feel the person is really receptive.
And you were saying, that the sort of spiritual effects were so kind of spectacular for you in your life that you found yourself talking to people about it, writing about it, speaking to people about it, and it's become a kind of part of your life's work, essentially.
Well, of course, it has, yes. Because again, I'm a very down to earth person. I need proofs to believe something. I was for many years I was in a spiritual system that was a bit pie in the sky. Now I really am down to earth. I need concrete proof, and it's because I have sorry, such positive returns on the practice of blessing that I continue and disseminate it. I know it heals. And again, I could speak to you just for hours, just telling you stories of healing.
Well, then, please do, please, because obviously it's had a lot of positive effects for you and others. So I'd love to ask you, can you share some of the positive experiences you've had?
Yes, well, let me give you. Just when I started blessing, I had, with an African friend from the Cameroon, we had organized a big event in a large hall in one of the largest schools, colleges in Geneva, and it had been announced on the radio. in the press. It was to be an evening of music and singing with this Afro-Caribbean orchestra. And the technician in charge of the college wanted nothing to do with our evening. And you know, these huge halls have very complex electronic systems that you need a technician to control them. And so I went to see the director, and he said, "Look, Mr. Pradervand, he's a civil servant. I can't force him to work after 5 o'clock. Just bring in someone from another college." And which we did, but it was very expensive. And 2 hours before the concert, I come with my Cameroonian friend to check that everything is in order. There are only 2 mics left on the stage. And my friend says, "Pierre, this is a catastrophe. I can't have a 12-person orchestra with singers and musicians and 2 mics." So we go and see the technician, of the one who hadn't wanted to collaborate. And he was so aggressive. And we were facing him, and he was speaking to my friend. And first I felt anger, turning around in my stomach. My little voice said, "Pierre, you're not going to solve this with anger. Just bless him." And I started blessing him. And in between 2 sentences, a huge smile on his face. He goes to his laboratory, comes back with a pile of mics, recommends us the best ones, and wishes us a wonderful evening. A total turnaround. Another example. When I quit my job, I decided to do an old dream of mine, which was to write a positive book on Africa, because there's been such a lot of negative stuff over the past 50 years, especially in French. I set out on a 14,000-kilometer trip through over 100 African villages, speaking to over 1,300 peasant farmers. These are people at the grassroots, because I had worked 11 years in Africa, and I was one of the co-founders at the time of the largest grassroots peasant network on the whole continent, with hundreds of thousands of members. And it was very exciting. And I was writing my manuscript, writing the book, when I met a young French writer who'd published already quite a few books. And we had a fantastic contact. And she said, "When you've finished your book, just send me the manuscript and I'll forward it to a friend in a good publishing house," which I did. And I phoned her to tell her, "Look, I'm sending you my manuscript. And by the way, I have taken an agent in Zurich for the English and the German, not the French." The minute I mentioned publisher's agent, she started exploding in the most vulgar expletives you can imagine. She must have had a very painful experience once in her life with one of these persons. And she just ended the conversation by saying, "Well, as long as you have an agent, don't count on me." And she slammed the phone down. Wow. And I was just totally taken back. And in the coming days, just because I didn't want to keep that image of her in my mind, every time I thought of her, I just sent her blessings of peace and calm and joy. She phones me 10 days later and says, "Pierre, tell your agent to send the manuscript to such and such in such and such publishing house." And the result was that it was immediately accepted for publishing by one of the best and oldest French publishing houses, Plomb. And that was the end of it.
Wow.
And again, I could continue for hours.
Yeah, no, I believe.
Other people's testimonies and healings, including even physical healing.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a way of healing and smoothing out the kind of negative,
anything unharmonious or negative, anything.
Yeah, lovely. And to be clear, you said this earlier, but you're absolutely clear. This is nothing affiliated with any religion or any spiritual tradition.
This blessing, I believe, is one of the oldest spiritual or religious practices of mankind.
Yeah.
It was one of the very first forms of religion or spirituality created by prehistoric populations, I believe.
Yeah.
They must have been in awe in front of, of nature. And when they started harvesting, how plants came up, and automatically, their early shamans must have created some kinds of invocation in which blessings were certainly a part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very old, totally non-denominational practice. I even have a friend who's a good friend of 50 years standing. She's a militant atheist. And when my book came out, she read it and started sharing it. So,
Lovely.
anyone can bless.
Lovely. Yeah, from atheist to wherever. Lovely. And your book, your new book, is called 365 Blessings to Heal Myself and the World. And part of the concept is there's a sort of meditative blessing for each day. Can you say something about what inspired you to write a book in this meditative format?
I just think I, realized and experienced that blessing is such a simple way of starting your day. And people who are not inclined to religion, who don't want to read complex theological or spiritual texts, or even long ones, I thought, well, they will appreciate a short blessing that can put their day on a good footing or face any kind of situation. And in my book, I have 365 blessings on all sorts of topics imaginable.
Yeah.
And I have selected three very different ones. One for child soldiers, one concerning bees, and one about making love, to show people that it applies to every single situation. Ben, I'm not interested in a spirituality that cannot relate to any situation.
Yeah.
I can't imagine a situation where I could not be blessing.
Beautiful. I think you should share some with us. I should share these three
Okay.
blessings with us.
Let me do so. I have my book here. Strange my. Sure. I would start with the one on child soldiers, because it's something that personally touches me very, 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 very much. One thing I stress always, Ben, is that blessing comes from the heart.
Yeah.
Is not a mind thing. A blessing just said with the mind has no healing impact whatsoever.
Yeah.
Blessing needs to come totally from the heart.
Yeah.
And when you bless child soldiers, think, some of these are taken as child soldiers at 6, 8 years old. I work as a volunteer in an outstanding, extraordinary foundation called the Women's World Summit Foundation. Yeah. The email, the website is simply woman.ch, woman.ch. And they have a program against violence against children. And the founder and director of the foundation was telling me the other day that in some areas where they train these kids, they teach them to shoot on their teddy bears, it's just so sick.
Yeah.
So when you make a blessing for child soldiers, let yourself, feel this deep compassion. You're not blessing some abstract people in foreign lands. You're blessing your own child.
Yeah.
We are all really brothers and sisters. And as a matter of fact, they say, an old Aramaic version of the second commandment, Aramaic was the language Jesus spoke, which says, love your neighbor who is yourself. Yeah. So I hope the people listening to me will hear this blessing in this spirit. From our heart of hearts, we bless children who are abducted and forced to serve in armed conflicts. We bless them in their innocence, that despite the trying and sometimes dramatic situations they are in, deep down inside them, the consciousness of this innocence stays awake. We bless them in their fundamental integrity, that the horrendous things they are forced to witness and often to accomplish may not erase their desire to escape from the human hell they have been forced into, or their belief in another more humane and normal life and the possibility of one day achieving it. We bless them in their consciousness of their oneness with you and of their essentially perfect divine identity. When they walk through the death canyon, may your hand keep them safe from all evil, both from performing it or being its victim. When solitude, hunger, sheer despair, or the desire to give up on life cruelly grips them, may the comforting presence of grace support them and lift them up. And finally, we bless the adults who so uncaringly force children who could be their own into such situations, that your spirit may awaken them to their true nature as children of God. Mm. Would you like another one?
Yeah, I certainly would. I just want to reflect for a second. I think, I think it struck me listening, how, of the deep compassion there, but also how this is almost it's a way of not not getting caught up in the despair of the news, isn't it? And a way of
absolutely. Oh, Ben, that's such an important point. You stressed that. So many people today are totally disheartened by the news and situations really the other side of the globe they don't think they can do anything about, but they can. Yeah. Our thought has such an incredible impact. Let me share with you, may I? Yeah. My favorite story on the impact of thought.
Sure.
I have a very dear friend, now he's in his 50s, but at that time he was a young man in his early 20s, was from a very fortunate family and decided he wanted to travel around the whole world. And one day he ends up in a Buddhist monastery in Thailand, and he didn't know if he would stay there one week, 1 year, or his whole life. In the end, he stayed over 2 years and really followed thorough monk's training. And every morning, early at 3 a.m, one of the monks had to go and ring a big gong on a neighboring hillside, which was a form of announcing the coming day to the neighboring surrounding villages. And so very early after arriving, the head of the monastery, I don't know what the Buddhists call such a person, and said, "Mark, as of tomorrow, you go and ring the gong." And Mark at the beginning was very angry. Had to get up at 2:15, go along this snake-covered path in the darkness, and he just hated it. And then suddenly he woke up to, Mark, you have to do this. Either you quit the monastery or you obeyed to the order you were given. So he decided to totally change his frame of mind, and that special day he left singing and walked up the hill with great gusto and rang the bell, the gong, really sending out heartfelt blessings to all the surrounding villages. He returns to the monastery. He enters the courtyard. There's one lone Buddhist monk in the courtyard who comes up to him and says, "Mark, what did you do today? The gong had a different sound." That's incredible. The change in his thought was felt in the sound of the gong by a monk a mile away.
Wow.
For me, that's just an amazing story which shows the impact that the quality of our thought has. And when you give a heartfelt blessing for the situation in Syria or anywhere in the world, in Afghanistan or on your home doorstep, know that if it is sincere, the blessing carries. There's a great American metaphysician of the 19th century, Mary Baker Eddy. She said, a deep sincerity is sure of success, but God takes care of it. Now, whatever God is to you, nobody really knows, but there's something up there or surrounding us or down below, everywhere, that is organizing this incredible universe.
Yeah. Lovely. A beautiful story and an inspiring story. So share us another one. Why don't you, the one about bees? Why?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I want to, blessing the environment today is so important. And as you know, bees all around, at least in Europe, are facing dramatic situation. I mean, many beekeepers are losing over half their the bees they have. It's really dramatic. Many could believe it's due to all these pesticides running around.
Yeah.
So I bless when I say it's the deity, okay, the divine being. I bless your wondrous, amazing creation and our close neighbors called bees. I bless them in their resilience to all forms of aggression menacing them, especially those of chemical origin. I bless them in the remarkable mission you did appoint for them and in their ability to fulfill their role perfectly. I bless the stupendous organization of beehives and bee colonies, which still defy human understanding. I also bless the producers of contested pesticides and the politicians defending them, that they may put the survival of our species and of bees before the bottom line. I bless them in their integrity and true spirit of service. I bless us, the public, that we may become totally alert to the issue and behave in a way that forwards healing on all levels, zoological, environmental, economic, political, and other. And above all, I bless us in our ability to develop a relationship of deep caring, unconditional love, and authentic reverence towards our sisters, the bees, and all creation. But 80% of our plants depend on bees to be pollinated. A few years ago, in one area of China, they had so abused of pesticides, all the bees had disappeared, and they had to pollinate trees by hand.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Well, you can do that in a small region for a short period of time, but not very long.
Wow.
So they are very, really very precious.
And I can feel the deep sincerity of those blessings, and I feel, to the reader that some of that is also infectious. And if you're reading the book every day, it will help the reader get to that point in themselves of sincerity and depth.
Exactly. And could I read a third one on
Of
making
course.
love?
Yeah, yeah.
Show that for blessing, everything is sacred. For me, making love in its true essence is one of the most sacred, beautiful, powerful experiences any person can experience. So let me make this a blessing for making love. May our lovemaking be a perfect expression of your love for us, an experience of ecstatic beauty and profound depth. May we put our partner's pleasure before our own and be most sensitive to their most subtle wish and hidden desire. May our bodies become instruments playing music for your glory, and our hearts be filled with the music of soul. May we, in the rush of busy lives, find refreshment for our souls, a sigh of peaceful rest for our bodies, and a special moment of green pastures for our deeper being. May it cement our togetherness In a unique way, lovemaking restores both body and soul, while at the same time being a gentle playground for the child in us. And above all, may it strengthen our commitment of faithfulness to each other in the understanding that we are both each other's keeper and the keepers of our spoken and unspoken vows. There. Three very different blessings.
And what I'm really experiencing, one, it's such a simple and short practice. It takes 5 minutes to open the book and read and experience a blessing every morning. And what experiencing is, I feel your deep passion for all of life. For living, all of,
Absolutely.
and I think it's very clear that the practice is a way, can reawaken people's passion for living. Yeah.
And I live in a state of constant awe and amazement and wonder in front of nature. Constant. And also the nature of people. I mean, I have so many beautiful, wonderful, incredible friends, and they are a topic of rejoicing and blessing and awe for me every day. I have much more enthusiasm for life at 80 than I had when I was 25 or 30.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can, just anyone watching this and listening to this can immediately tell that you're speaking the truth. You're speaking directly from your heart.
Speaking from the heart and from 30 years experience.
Beautiful. And I think anyone listening to you will be inspired. But I think for someone, say, who's new, who would like to learn to bless and create a blessing practice, but maybe someone who struggles with their own negative feelings and their anger, and who might say, to be sincere in blessing other people when they have a lot of trouble with other people. Do you have any advice or encouragement to someone who's starting off there?
Well, I always say there are three qualities necessary for someone who's starting on the spiritual path. First, a clear intention. We cannot do anything in life without intention. In the morning when we wake up, we must have the intention of getting up and going to the bathroom, doing our teeth, and running a good day. For anything in life, any task, we need intention. Second is sincerity. On the spiritual path, you can't fake it. Be sincere. And the third quality, Ben, is perseverance. We are in a quick culture where we want immediate returns. Well, that doesn't work on the spiritual path. Sometimes there are problems I've been working on myself, personal, for over 10 or 20 years, and I still have to learn lessons. But as I believe that we live in an incredibly benevolent universe, and that everything, and I mean everything, that happens to me is ultimately for my good. My only form of prayer today is thank you and silence, learning to listen. How could I inform an infinitely omniscient intelligence of what I need? He knows it better, or she knows it rather better than I do.
Yeah.
So I think I would tell a person who wants to start blessing, just persevere. If you are sincere, again, I repeat Eddie's statement, Mary Baker Eddy's statement, a deep sincerity is sure of success, for God or the source or the universal intelligence takes care of it.
Wonderful. I really think there's, I hope lots of people hear this, because I think that hearing you is is going to really connect with people and really inspire them to practice as you have done. I think I will ask you if so your book is out very soon, but this interview will be up for a long time, forever. So 365 blessings to heal myself and the world. Um, where can people find you if they want to get in touch or if they want to know more?
Okay. I have a Facebook page, but they can, above all, they can mail me directly. email me. I'll give my email. The address is you should have a pen and a piece of paper. So let's wait 5 seconds so people take a pen and a piece of paper.
And I'll
My,
put it on the screen as well, so people can see
okay.
it as well.
My email address is Pierre, Pierre, at Vivre Autrement. I spell this, it's in French, VivreAutrement.ch. That's also the address of my mountaintop workshops. I'm getting ready to spend 2 months in the mountains at 7,000 feet in an old chalet where I organize workshops on personal development and spirituality. And if any group wants to come from England or anywhere English speaking, if there are 8 or 10 of them, I will organize a workshop just for them.
Wonderful. Listen, thank you so much for coming on. It's been such a pleasure, to listen and hear and learn about the blessing practice. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ben. It's been my joy and delight to have this conversation with you. And I send my abundant blessing to all those who are listening, that you may find deep consolation, peace, and joy in this amazing and yet such simple practice. Thank you.